Good afternoon, everyone. It's halfway through January. Can you believe it? So here's another video to help you liberate your mind because I've got a few minutes and I thought it'd be quite nice to do another one. And today I want to talk about how we do emotions, why people struggle to change. Essentially, a lot of people have got very good at making themselves feel bad. And what they don't realize is that they are essentially creating those states with a very specific recipe. Okay, when you do NLP and things like that, you're actually working out what people's recipes or strategies are that make up what they have going on for them in their issue. They call them a problem state, right? And what people tend to be is governed by their emotions, but what they don't realize is those emotions don't just come. They come because we have the thoughts that we have, which creates the emotions in the body, and the emotions create states, and those states create our actions. And therefore, it's kind of a filtering system through that. We call it the communication model. Now, when someone starts to try and help themselves, right, they may not go to a therapist. They might say, right, I'm going to read a self-help book. I'm going to look at some stuff, and I'm going to change how I do things. I'm going to make some positive changes. It's January, right? We've all got those New Year's resolutions. The trouble we have is that most of their patterns are unconscious, right? So they might try to make some changes in their life, but they're trying to do it using the old recipes, right? So let me give you an example of that. Things like affirmations. Affirmations are basically when we say words or phrases that are empowering, and they just don't work very well for a lot of people. And the reason they're not working is basically because they're saying them in the way that they do everything else. In NLP, we say the way you do one thing is the way you do everything. So let me talk to you a little bit about these recipes, right? Now, some of you may be familiar with this idea of the communication model in terms of the pie chart. We talk about this. And what they realized when they did a kind of cross-section of how people how effective and what people resonate with, or what makes someone a good public speaker or communicator, they realized when they sort of segregated that up onto the pie diagram that the words were actually the smallest piece of the pie in terms of the importance of the words, right? It was 7%. So if you're just going to start to try and change your life, listen to that, to try and change your life, just by changing some of the words and things you say, it ain't going to do a lot if you're saying it in a really kind of unenthusiastic way. And so imagine you're someone that's really depressed, right? Let's go back to this idea of a recipe of an outcome or a desired state, right? When someone is depressed, how do they speak? They usually speak quite slowly. Everything seems to be like an effort. The tone of their voice is very, their body language, heads down. They're very everything, the physiology is heavy. It's just, and this is what you'll get. Someone, obviously I get people that come to me in a session and they say, look, I'm doing everything you said, but I just feel down. And it's because they've got the perfect recipe for feeling down, right? That literally everything about what they're doing, what the words they're saying, the tone that they're saying it in, and the body language that they're creating. So you can say, I feel really confident, right? It's obvious, and I'm obviously making this a little bit lighthearted, right? Depression is not something to be taken lightly. And of course, there will be other factors. If someone's clinically depressed, their chemicals are in unbalance and things like that, and they may need some additional help, like some antidepressants and things like that. And of course, I recommend going to a therapist or someone like myself if that's happening to you. But the point I'm trying to make here is it's not just what you're saying to yourself, it's the way you're saying it to yourself and the physiology and the way that you're saying it in terms of everything else. It's a recipe, right? So maybe start to ask yourself, what is the recipe for confidence, right? And it's not just saying those. So this is the other thing, the words you use, right? You don't want to be framing things in the negative. I don't want to feel depressed anymore, or whatever it is, because depression isn't something, it's not a feeling, it's what you're doing. It's like I could get into a whole spiel about that. So I'm not going to do that. The point I'm trying to make is if you want to feel confident, that's what you've got to focus on. And that's what you're moving towards rather than what you're moving away from. So instead of saying, I don't want to feel insecure, right? Because the brain doesn't do negations, right? All it's going to hear is insecure. You want to be, I want to feel confident. And when you're saying it, you want posture to be upright. You want posture to be good. You want to mean it, right? You want to say it. You want to say, I really, and you can actually say it in the now, because here's the thing with confident people, right? What's the difference between you and them is that they're actually doing the thing, the recipe for confidence, right? And the recipe for confidence is somebody that does confidence. They talk in that way. They use those words. I mean, there is something else to say here as well, which is, of course, we have these beliefs, right? You may have some skeletons in your closet. And what I mean by that is some things like trauma and some things like limiting beliefs about yourself. And again, you may want to come to see someone like me, because what I will be doing is what I call subtractive psychology, which will be taking things out that are getting in your way. So it's not really how do you get confidence? Because it's not something you get. It's not a physical thing. It's really saying, well, what's getting in the way of you being confident? Because actually there will be times in your lives where you do feel confident. When you're with the people you love or friends, places where you feel comfortable and you feel in control. When you haven't got things going on in your mind and you're just lost in the moment enjoying that. And notice, what is your tone and your body language and your words like when you're like that, right? The tone is the next important thing. That's the 37%. I think it might be 38%. And then the final one is the physiology. It's actually more important than the way you're saying it in the words, the way you're doing this, the posture, the hand gestures, you may have heard of the power pose thing. There's a TED talk on that if you're interested in that. But you can do a little experiment right here, right now, right? If you were to just for a moment remember a time where you actually were in a situation where you felt good, you're with your friends or you're out on a good night out and you're not thinking about anything, you're in company where you feel comfortable, just for a second, sit up straight in a really strong, confident posture and really remember that. You can close your eyes if it helps and just remember where you were, who was there, how it sounded, how it looked, and how it felt. And within a few seconds, you'll start to feel good because your brain can't tell the difference between imagination and reality. And there you are, you're feeling great. And you're in this confident posture. Now, here's the test. Without changing anything physical, try to feel bad. And you can't, right? Because your body will want to change. It will want to do the recipe of feeling bad. It will want to slump. It will want to come down like that. But if you hold that up, you can't do both at the same time. The physiology will win every time over that mentality. So if you are someone that is struggling with confidence, then just do confident. Fake it till you make it, right? Because here's the thing. When you employ the recipe of confidence, you start to actually feel confident, right? And if you're going to do affirmations, then you want to get them working for you. Get a good positive, you might want to do some dancing or some power pose or something. Get yourself into a state, right? A resourceful state. And then say the words. And as you're saying the words, mean the words, be animated, right? The gestures, the strong, confident posture, the tone, the wording of those things in the positive, right? I feel good about myself and all the rest of it. Now, here's the final tip I'm going to give you today, right? As you're doing all of that, if you start tapping this either between here or at the bottom, so you're tapping here as you're doing that, as you're getting animated and you're saying those words and you're really starting to get into it and start to get the posture and everything working with you and you say, I feel really good. I feel really good. And you're getting there. This basically sends a signal up. Okay, I could spend a long time explaining the science of that. They're not entirely sure what's going on there. So all I'm going to say is that this will amplify that state. It sends a signal up. It's in Chinese medicine. It's a whole thing. It's called the triple warmer. And the idea with that is it just adds some oomph to that. It puts you in a learning state, right? So now you're feeding in resources. And here's the reason why, right? When you start to do these things, we create that neural connection, right? You're creating a new way of being, right? Now, it takes a while to make that a strong, firm, connected. You've heard the expression fire together and wire together. It becomes a permanent thing, right? Well, if you're just doing it with words, it takes a long time, right? But if you're doing all of those together, imagine it's like one strand. Every time you say it with words, it's getting a bit stronger, the connection. If you get the feelings going by getting the tone and the physiology and the words going, it's the equivalent to doing about 500 at a time. It just gets strong. So after about a 5-minute session of you saying those things, instead of having to say it 1,000, 10,000 times, if you start saying it with all of that after about 3 or 4 times, it will feel true, especially if you're doing this with it, right? So if you want to change, you're going to have to create the recipe. And the other thing is, you've got to want it. You've got to, instead of it just being, yeah, I'd quite like to change, right? If somebody comes to me and says, yeah, I should probably give up smoking, I'm like, off you go, right? You're not ready, right? You've got to make this a must, not a should, right? I have to. This has to happen. Something has to change. We call it being at threshold, right? Something has to change. It's got to be me. And it's got to be now. It has to happen. I can't go on like this. That's when you know you're at threshold. And if you mean it and you're motivated and you genuinely follow this recipe for confidence or anything else you want to achieve and do it and follow through, that's the difference between people that change and the ones that just go back to doing the same things they already did, then that's going to happen for you. You've got to do it, right? So just like I say to any of my clients, I can, like a personal trainer, I can give you the exercises, but I can't lift the weights for you, right? So if somebody comes back to me and says, I say, how did it go? What have you been doing? I say, well, I didn't really get time to do a lot of that stuff. Can you now fix me? I'm like, well, it doesn't work like that. I don't fix anybody. A, because you're not broken, but B, you've got to do the work, right? Nobody can do that for you. And if you lift those weights, the muscles get bigger. If you do these exercises, your confidence will increase. So, enough said. Hopefully that's motivated you a little bit, and I wish you the best for the rest of January. Take care.